Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Index podcast, where we come together every couple of weeks to discuss on-chain data, chart crimes, and metrics that move the crypto industry. Today, I have with me Hildobi, resident data house elf at Dragonfly,
Hello, everyone.
Danning, chief on-chain sleuth at Pantera Capital,
Hi.
and I am Boxer, and I am the community powers at Dune. Before we start, nothing we say here should be relied upon as legal, financial, investment, tax, or even life advice. We're acting independently of our respective professional roles. And with that, hey, both, we are gonna talk about prediction markets today. Once again, I think the last episode was probably like 9 months ago or something, where I very wisely predicted the rise of prediction markets. It was not a very elaborate prediction, but
What was the prediction?
I don't like Primo Data, the data analyst, or like one of the data analyst guys that now works at Polymarket. He quote tweeted like a part of the video of our podcast. It was like, oh, Boxer like said like, I don't know. I think it was like Polymarket is a way for Web2 people to engage with crypto more. And like turns out that was kind of true. We're getting a few more. We've transition sounds wrong. We've made a bunch more people crypto degens by showing them Polymarket, which is nice. But yeah, with that, I'll give it over to Denning, who has prepared a little bit of a introduction and kind of like is gonna lead us through the conversation in this podcast. So you go ahead.
Yeah, the reason why I want to talk about prediction market, I think like no surprise to anybody, like your timeline feed these days is either like AI, like vibe code, cloud bot, multiple bot, I guess now renamed, but also like here is this AI vibe coded trading bot that I made that made me like 10K, 20K within night on prediction market or so. And like I'm not even sure like are those like real analysts or AI slop that is making all those articles, and what's the purpose of that? Like are they just FOMOing people to like try to do the same thing, or is that even a scam or something? I don't know. Like, but you're seeing so much content here, but I feel like none of them can be taken seriously. But at the same time, if you look at like prediction market data on Dune, it's really just like volume, notional volume. Some are touching upon like open interests, and there is this one that's like I think very funny. Dune data. I think his handle got renamed to data dashboards in the backend by Dune using the centralized power, which is still abusing
Come on, this was I like he's adamantly defending his choice of name, but I think both Dune Data and Data Dashboards are horrible names. I'm not gonna back down from this position. But yeah, we coordinated with him to change the name. Actually, we did not just rock him randomly. He's a nice guy. Like I like him. But yeah, the choice of names, I'm not quite aligned with.
Yes, and actually, not to talk shit about him too much because we're actually interviewing him in the next episode. But yeah, so this were like I'm sharing screen right now for the audio listeners, but I was ranting about this on Twitter, and like if you like look at your time feed, a lot of them are just some articles talking about how much money they made, or also I like there are some other that's like AI vibe coded or like data feed for Polymarkets and others. All these are I think like are useful tool if it's like actually well
Can you
intentioned.
go full screen?
Yes, sure, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's like it's a good tool if it's well intentioned, but also like I just want to talk about something that's beyond growth and like volume, right? But first of all, to lay the land, you can find on data dashboards data dashboard on Dune that he has this prediction market that's like the most comprehensive summary of the markets. On the left side, you can see the volume has been compiling like skyrocketing kind of since the August 2025, which is half a year ago. Yeah, and now the biggest three included here are Polymarket, Kalshi, and Opinion are the three biggest markets. On the right side, you can also see like the market share is like split up by these three. I'm sure there's way more like prediction markets apps are in the making. Like We also backed one called Novik. I think it's just data is not included here. And like the other part that is like crazy is if you click into all this dashboard, a lot of this data are like basically off chain and like uploaded. And I know that like Dune also aggregates Kalshi data. I don't know. I think Kalshi got on Solana by the end of last year or something.
No, they're still fully off chain. They allow deposits from Solana, but they're not settling a single trade on chain.
Uh-huh.
They've very successfully marketed themselves as crypto friendly or crypto adjacent, but they're
Yeah.
fully off
There's
chain
no
decentralized. They're fully off chain centralized. There's no component of Kalshi whatsoever that would settle anything on chain.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Oh.
actually, Polymarket has all its data. Like I have open
Mhm.
interest, volume, a bunch of stuff like this that's on Dune and queryable.
Yeah. I
And
was able.
that's also why you have, if you look on like data dashboard, Kalshi, there's only notional volume. There's no raw volume. Whereas for Polymarket, because it's all on chain, you have both.
Yeah. My analysis was on only Polymarket because I can find their data on chain as well. That's also like I looked at Kaushi's table on Dune. It was only daily aggregated, so I was looking to Polymarket. So there is that. Basically, the market share split up by the three. But there's one also very obvious thing you need to pay attention to, which is all these platform have very different breakdown in terms of like category of the markets. So like on the left side, I'm showing a chart that's breaking down the category of Polymarket's volume, notional volume, meaning like basically USD value. And sports is only 1/3 of it, and politics, crypto are the other 2/3. Crypto is basically like say if Bitcoin gonna go up to 100K this week or so, that kind of prediction. And then Kalshi has actually like 90% of volume are sports. And you can see like this spike didn't happen like from day one. Like in the day one, there most of the prediction markets are like financials and politics as well. Only starting from last year, January 2025, sports just shooting up like crazy. And I did a little bit like research on this with like fact checking and stuff. So they have this like license, I think called DCM, which is kind of like federal level, kind of approved by CFTC, and it's kind of like allowing Kalshi to operate across all the states in US, where in the past sports betting are forbidden per state level, and so now like because they have this thing that's like on like above the like state level kind of power, and so people are like basically betting on Kalshi without worrying that they are illegal, even though it's still not said it's legal, if that makes sense. It's like operating a gray zone.
It is author, isn't it? I think because Polymarket has had
At least
its sports license in like November, right?
Yeah, at least in the beginning of last year, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I feel like now what I'm seeing on the timelines of Polymarket is trying to like specialize this markets like Polymarket sports. And I think there's another aspect of it is like different markets might be actually different profitability for market makers to participate, right? If it's like more retails are against you, like for example, like more retail are in the sports market, assumingly, I'm not sure yet, right? Like we can look into some data in a minute. Then it's probably likely more like more money to make for market makers because the retails are always like the one that's only clicking the UI and like likely operate like slower than a sophisticated traders. But yeah, like just to note the fact that like the markets are very different across this platform. Also, I've heard crazy things like market makers on Kalshi potentially can also get like equity deal. Like which is kind of like a similar incentive that I've heard in the past when I work at DEX aggregator, where market maker, if they perform really well, there's like a competitive incentive where you can potentially like get a percent of the share of the company, but maybe. Yeah, so just to note the difference of these markets breakdown. But also I've heard that like there is a lot of front end like Robinhood and for example Coinbase sports betting that launched last week are using Kalshi in the back end. So I feel like all these like distribution of order flow is also very important.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that Kalshi has uniquely done well. They have partnerships with Phantom, Coinbase, even PricePicks, which is like every second bro podcast that I listen to is like advertised in by PricePicks. So it's like a really, really big They're spending like massive advertisement money, so they must like make a lot of money on the other side. So like having those kind of integrations in place is like, I think that's what currently kind of winning Kalshi the distribution race. And I think technically the Polymarket is not even able to really do this well using their smart contracts. So that's something where Kalshi, like with their centralized structure, is like uniquely enabled to be able to do that. Probably also like if Polymarket were to do this, they need to give the same rate to everyone because it would kind of like just appear transparently on chain. Whereas Kalshi is like at the freedom to kind of like, we're gonna like split the winnings 5% with Coinbase, but we're only gonna split the winnings 1% with Phantom, or whatever those splits might be, like party A and party B, like not calling out anything in particular here. But yeah, so like I think that's like a very interesting market dynamic at the moment. I think MetaMask has integrated Polymarket as well, and they're kind of like doing this through some kind of router contract, but it's like a weird workaround. It's not really working too well. They can't, I think they're only charging on deposits and withdrawals. That's what it is, because you actually can't kind of like, there's no fee split on the Polymarket kind of markets themselves, whereas Kalshi is able to do this. So currently I think that's what's winning the race for Kalshi in terms of distribution, but whether that counts in the long term and like kind of like building out these network effects for the betting markets, we'll have to see. So far it seems like the Polymarket as the one monolithic platform is still surviving pretty well, which I don't know, I wouldn't expect so much. Like the platform play that Kalshi is going for actually kind of like in theory I think would be the winner if somebody would just kind of present me with this problem in a blank space.
Kalshi is really popular with sports, but for the rest it's still basically only in Polymarket.
You're saying like the basically blockchain infrastructure underlying behind Polymarket kind of actually is giving a little bit like a DevX like barrier. You're saying like it's harder for front end to integrate. I feel like it can go both way. Like it also can guarantee you like the earnings are going to be transparent, right? Like compared to the other one, that whatever data they're publishing, you have to trust them. Even though maybe that's not a strong argument enough. But also I was going to note that like in terms of like the growth strategy, it's the same for either, right? Like even if you're an app on the blockchain, you can still promote on like Instagram and like Facebook, right? So that doesn't really stand a difference there. And I've been like seeing both of the, so I don't know if you guys are into this like UGC content era. So basically like all these ads today now are, how to say, pretend they're like user generated organic content. And I've seen like this same thing for both Kalshi and Polymarket. Like they're just ridiculous, like kind of plots where someone made this much money and there was like a podcast interview with a Kalshi trader, but like obviously that's an ads, but it's kind of genius, like really smart. I'm scrolling all these ads on my Instagram, but
you need to get out of the slop hell.
It's not slop. It's actually like well plotted like content.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a good slop.
But what's the legality of Polymarket in the US now? I think they still haven't officially gone live with the product, right?
No, they have the app is in beta. It's currently being beta tested, but it should launch publicly soonish. But the license has so they got licenses in November.
Yeah, so they got the license now. They're kind of beta testing, but like, so maybe this is like actually like once Polymarket launches their US app, I think then this chart will be very interesting to watch. Like, can they compete with Kalshi to take back the sports betting mark in the US? Like, is there an appetite for Polymarket traders to even do the sports betting, or are they uniquely kind of just? I mean, they're already growing in market shares for sports, so apparently there seems to be a market, and maybe this is more of an international audience, or Americans just don't give a fuck. But I guess we'll find out once the app launches. It's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Super Bowl is rolling in like literally this week. So I guess like that's why they were trying to really push the timing for the launch.
Wait, what's the date of the Super Bowl?
This Sunday, like February 8th.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but today we were not gonna just talk about volume. So I was like trying to look into what are the other interesting thing we can analyze or identify in the behavioral stats of like Polymarket's users and platform. There's always like some economic angle you can zoom in, right? Like, so if you're familiar with like the MEV, like PBS, like analysis we've done in the past, do you know like there's this obvious like incentive for block builders and also like validators to play the timing game? So meaning like if you are gonna like wait long enough, you're likely gonna get a higher outcome of like the payouts. And so like I with that lens, I just like trying to look into how does that look like differently for different type of markets within a platform. So this is June data that I like checked on Polymarkets for all the markets that is already resolved with more than 50 million volume to make it like big enough like sample. And so I categorize them in generally into two type. One is the news markets, basically like will Trump be elected, or like if it will strike Iran, or like Russia or Xi, China stuff. And the other one is sports, which is all kinds of like, including like an NFL, like basically football, or like basketball, or like F1, all kinds of stuff, and boxing as well. And you can tell like if you look at like a timeline of how much volume are stacking up cumulatively across these two type of markets, they look very different. So on the left side, I'm showing a GIF here that all the news markets, they kind of stay flat until the very last 20% of the duration. All the volumes stack up until the 100%, like very sharply in the very last 20% of the duration. So it's like you're trading based on some like very uncertain signal until the very last minute. There's like very certain info from the media that comes out. Then you try to really like flip your bets or like place your bets. Maybe you haven't even showed your hands in the markets at all, so you like place your first bets. And for the sports on the right side of the chart, looks very different. Like the volume accumulates since the beginning, and it's kind of like goes continuously, somewhat goes flatter in the very end. So it's like in the very end of the game, most people already placed their bets and their volume in the game already. And there's no crazy like people are holding information to the very last minute or something. And if I summarize into two series of times,
I have a question on for the GIFs before the time frame, the 0 for like sports. When is it? Is it always like X amount of time before a match, or how is it?
It's a good question. I'm taking the start time of the markets based on the onchain data, but to answer that, actually, there are two type of markets here. One is like a actual game, or two, it's like over a whole season, like say over a whole year, there's multiple games started, and so the start time would be the first game starting time.
Oh, but wait, so it's you can't bet before the game starts.
The market start, like as it's defined by Polymarket in its API, is just that's the time when the bet has been approved by the Polymarket, kind of like bet commission, whatever that thing is. And you can start betting. So that's not the start of the game as like,
exactly.
I don't know, like at 8 p.m. tonight, there's a Champions League game or whatever. No, the market for that would have already existed for like a week before, 2 weeks before. But I think that would have also been like a point I would have made, where it's like the market duration for the sports betting market is probably like 2 to 3 weeks, whereas like the US election literally went on for 2 years or something. So like something to probably consider while doing that analysis.
But there's also news that's like, will Zelensky wear the suits in July?
So here you can see that like the duration of markets. This is only Polymarket, but it's very different. So politics this is in minutes, 200,000 minutes. I don't know, it's pretty long. Sports like 9,000, 10,000. So it's very, very different in terms of lifespan. So there may be also some adjustment to be done, because it may be that it is both that like the last 4 hours where most volume comes, but it's just that since politics is much longer, that makes it look like it's tail end.
Yeah, I try to like break down the data also by the length of saying like if it's less than a month, or if it's more than 6 months, and if it's more than a year. It didn't really show different series were separating each other. Like it didn't show that the time length aspect was a differentiating factor just from visualizing. But I totally see that. Like one thing I'm still puzzled by is like in this data set, like somehow the two boxing game looks very different from all the other sports game. Like the two boxing game looked like will Tyson win in this game versus the other person. looked very different and similar to the news instead of actually similar to sports. So
I think this could be because of like the just much shorter markets or much longer markets. Sorry. So because on average, I'm looking sports time length is about like 7 days. So the sports market are open for 7 days.
But how do you explain that like the say Super Bowl kind of lasts for a year too, right? Like across the whole season versus like election.
Yeah, I'm just saying on average. I don't know about all of them. But I'm looking at like my numbers and dividing by 60 and 24. And for politics, on average, it's 160 days. So it's very, very different, like a week to half a year.
I see. So you get like the average like statistics first, and then maybe do a scatter plot. To see if
what I would do? No, what I would do even maybe is try to see like just look at like past 3 days of data, like the last 3 days up until resolution, and compare all markets and see like how much of that like volume comes in like at the last minute, and that way you have like a more normalized view. Like you include where it starts and then you see how much.
Okay, but also like 3 days is like arbitrary to different markets.
Oh yeah, it is arbitrary.
For sports, it can be last 30 minutes of the game or something.
Yeah, no, of course. It's just like it feels like since 7 is the average for sports, most should have 3 days of data. That's why I chose that random number.
Yeah, but anyway,
this is normalized amongst time because you're just using percentages. So I think like the overall point of this graph still somewhat stands, but it's very hard to kind of like compare across the different timelines.
It is normalized, but across an arbitrary start. Like markets could start like 6 months before, or it's completely so like it's completely different. But you have to account for when relative to the game.
I don't think it's like super arbitrary. I would think that probably Polymarket has some internal processes for this.
No.
Like, as soon as the market essentially becomes relevant, like they're also like a company that is constrained by economic resources, and they need to allocate the resources efficiently, and they're not gonna just randomly kind of like start creating the markets for 2032 today. Like I don't think that's gonna be so. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's completely arbitrary.
I see what you're saying though. Like it makes somewhat of a sense to be like, okay, like there's some arbitrariness because the internal processes in Polymarket will also change over time. Where like, do they create the markets 2 weeks before or 6 weeks before?
It's also that like most political markets, they'll probably start around the same time in advance. But if you compare it to sports markets, those will be, that's what I mean. When you compare across categories, you got to account for that difference. That's probably very notable. Yeah. It's like 1 week versus 6 months of data for politics versus. So it's that's why I mean I think it skews the data a lot.
Make her point.
Sorry. my bad.
Yeah. I mean it's a great discussion, but I think like we won't have conclusion on this podcast. So this is the shape of the chart. Like they look very different for different sports market and versus news market. If there's any analyst in the audience that is looking into it deeper, let us know. Be very interested to know. But yeah, all the possibility you guys discussed are possible factors, I think, that can affect. But yeah, this is like something similar, but presented in a different way, where if you categorize the markets and then measure the volume half time, meaning like at what time point normalized did the volume reach 50% of the total cumulative, you kind of see all the sports market is like have like short volume half time, and then the news one actually like stays till the later half of the time duration percentage. On the y-axis, I'm also measuring like trying to behaviorally measuring the user side, which is like I'm checking on-chain, basically like the trades, right? Like what was the first time a user placed the bets? And you can see all the sports markets are kind of like having this late user share, meaning like the user who only placed their first trades at the last 10% of duration has very low share for sports. And basically like over 90% of the sports market have their user place the bets before the last 10% of the duration, if that makes sense. And then the news are also like have way higher. So just like a differentiator chart to show that difference again. But I think like the interesting questions are stuff beyond this charts, which is like if you understand well how the different behaviors for different markets are from user side. Maybe you can try design different custom fee payouts, like, or liquidity incentive for at the different stage of the markets for different type of markets. And like if you're a market maker on the platform, how should you like trade against others? And it's a lot of insights there to if dig further. But yeah, I just feel like I've been getting a lot of like interesting data websites, links and stuff that there's so much more to analyze about prediction markets that's not volume. For example, how accurate are prediction markets? Is right now like mainstream media are quoting like these bets on Polymarket, say like Trump or some politicians might do this or that. Like the people users on Polymarket platform think 60% is going to happen or so. There's this metrics called Brier score, which is basically measure across the whole time length in the time series how accurate all the prices, basically the scores, were closer or basically like how close it is to the final resolution. So to measure like how accurate the whole time it is. So this is another like there's this website called Brier.fyi was like kind of blowing my mind in the beginning, where they also like pointed out that saying like, hey, like accuracy can differ by different market category across different platforms. So like Kalshi is better at predicting like economics and sports and tech, but Polymarkets might be better at science somehow, like the data here, which is up to October last year. But I just think like this is a very important like note that like, yeah, you have to study the markets by different category. There's another thing called like calibration, which is like a whole family of study in like academic side, where it's like looking at statistically how honest, I guess, like, or how, I don't know how to really explain this in Eli 5, but like saying, if someone talks to me, like if Boxer talks to me, but being like, hey, I will do this thing. Like I play football and I win 50% of time, but actually he only wins 30% of time. Then he's overconfident. So he's like above basically the calibrated line. And so you can basically look at a set of markets on different platforms to know if Kalshi is overconfident on this type of topic or not, or like if Polymarket is underconfident. So like things like that can also help us to inform how accurate the market is. I have one last thing to share, which is work from my teammate Ali, who has been in this show. She's a big football game. How to say? She's a big like NFL fan, and so she did this study about like understanding how, first of all, like basically comparing Polymarket and Kalshi, which one has more liquidity in terms of like all the sports markets specific to like football games. So this chart here I'm showing, which is on the x-axis, it's kind of implied liquidity depth. So the more to the right means the market's deeper liquidity, and it's based on like reconstructing the trades, because we don't have the order book of Polymarket, but we can use some kind of methods to like infer how much of deep liquidity depths there were based on how big of a trade moved how much of the price. And the y-axis is like historical, like cumulative number of the games that fall into that liquidity depths. So here you can see Polymarket is like more on the right compared to Kalshi. So Polymarket does have like more liquidity based on our analysis using this set of data. At the same time, we were trying to identify like which market react faster towards the the changing events in the game. So for example, like there are many type of factors that can change the prediction or outcome of the game, right? So if the team is scoring, or if there is like a turnover, meaning like one of the team lost the ball even though they were keeping the ball for a while, and or there was a penalty of somebody who will be banned for a while or something. And the last one was like possession, which meaning like this team is now controlling the ball. But so it's very interesting to see like the pattern here. For example, there's like a Chicago to Philadelphia game, and Chicago started low with probability, but because Chicago is in position of the ball, over time the price, basically the probability went up, but then it dropped because whenever you hold the ball for too long enough, but you don't have a breakthrough of the defense, then basically you're not gonna score that, and then you kind of start dropping. So it's like super interesting. It's like real time prediction of all the like possibility of the game basically. And the the key finding here is that actually we found out that Kalshi leads the reaction towards all the changes by 7 seconds on average across all the game that we looked at. One important thing to note is that I think there's a thing called like 3 seconds delay on Polymarket. So like when you place the bets, you're not allowed to like basically get matched for 3 seconds or something. I don't know if Boxer know better about this. Yeah, and
there's some kind of arbitrary delay in the Polymarket API. I talked to some random trader at the meetup last week, and he was complaining about this. But yeah, so I think frankly you just can't be a lot faster on Polymarket, and I guess like there's probably like, I mean, the fact that those two graphs are overlaying each other so closely would tell me that there's like arbitrage happening a lot between like Kalshi and Polymarket if there's the same outcome. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, like if you're running like image recognition based whatever trading algorithms, you probably do that on Kalshi and not on Polymarket, because Polymarket is delayed. But yeah, it's very interesting, and like for whatever reason that is the case, I would hope that they can bring it down in the future.
Yeah. Basically like we see that it's kind of counterintuitive but also not, which is like Polymarket actually has more liquidity for sports, which is surprising because it looks like Kalshi has way more volume, but at the same time Kalshi reacts way faster than Polymarket. Regardless, it's because users there are more like close to the game, or it's because of an artificial delay. It's worth looking into deeper, but it also makes sense that like with less liquidity, maybe the price moves more sharply. So that's why it's like Polymarket has way more liquidity, so you don't see the price move as much because how thick it is and kind of gets smoothed. But I know that you guys also have looked into Polymarket. So anything to add on this topic?
I'm still looking into it, trying to get more in the nitty-gritty of the stats, looking at like, you know, comparing like sport events from one another. You can also see like breaking down further sports itself, and you know, you can spot when the season starts, when people start betting ahead of the season, and yeah, stuff like this. But same for politics, same for sport, same for crypto. I think all these markets have their own like methods of working and the way people work, like play with those. So I think they require each an individual analysis essentially. So yeah, that'll come eventually when I've got more data on this.
Yeah, I think this battle is super interesting to watch play out, like the centralized Kalshi versus the decentralized Polymarket. On your last point, Denning, do you know if anyone can be a market maker on Kalshi, or is this like limited to a few entities?
Yeah.
Anyone can sign up as a market maker?
Oh, you mean if
Are there
anyone?
no requirements?
I doubt it will be permissionless. I think it needs to be like team level partnership. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's also like a reason probably why Polymarket has higher liquidity depth, because there's just like, it's just permissionless. Anyone can post bids to the order book of Polymarket. So yeah,
I think that's part of the reason why Kalshi got regulatory approval before, is because you have this kind of KYC on not KYC, but they're more vetted before being a market maker, whereas it's more permissionless in Polymarket's land.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's also going to be interesting how Polymarket US is going to shape out to be, because like probably they can't run on the same crypto rails as here. Like they can't like use UMA as like the final decision maker and all of this stuff. I would imagine. So we'll see how all of that goes. I think we can probably check back in 6 months or so. I think, is there also like a US midterm election happening this year? I feel like that should be coming up. So that's probably also going to be like a very big, big advertisement spend from both Kalshi and Polymarket to gather users for this. So it stays interesting. I haven't seen like updated user numbers or like estimates of user numbers for both of these platforms in a while. That would be interesting to just kind of like see how many of these are actually humans. Can we qualify them based on like previous crypto activity, or like maybe just deposits straight from exchanges or deposits through MoonPay, like whatever onboarding platforms they use. That kind of those kinds of things, because like there sure is a lot of airdrop farmers on Polymarket, and Polymarket's volumes are to be taken with a grain of salt anyways, because there's no fees, or at least there was no fees for a while. Did they enable the fees? I don't know. But yeah, and like that essentially enables you to wash trade, which also like really inflates user numbers. But all of those things, yeah, a challenge to be tackled. I think, yeah, would just be, I'd just be genuinely curious if we're like at 100K people betting on Polymarket now, or if it's like there's still the same 10K that are basically moving out of crypto.
I do believe Polymarket enabled a small fee recently, and market like volume has held up, even gone a bit better. So yeah, I think they want to raise slowly the fee to a reasonable level.
I mean, they need to make money. Fair enough.
Do you guys see yourself consume newsfeed based on Polymarket, like prediction markets?
Yeah.
One day.
Ooh, like I can on the morning of the German election, yeah, I think like I it's essentially the first place I go to. Like even the US election, it's like I like Polymarket is a way better resolution mechanism for those to get like the most accurate like current news. And I think that's true for any election for that matter, because there's just like some poll sci nerds sitting somewhere in a control center, and they're monitoring all the news and adjusting a Polymarket positions based on this. And I think that's wonderful. Like I think this is a great truth finding algorithm for politics, at least for like all the gambling use. Like I don't know, I'm not much of a sports betting guy, never really got into it, so that like I don't really understand what's happening there. I really don't understand the appeal, but I guess let the people gamble. Like I don't really mind.
Yeah, there's definitely a market there with I'm not necessarily a part of it either, but there's demand. So yeah, you know, there's a will, there's a way.
I can't wait for German inner cities have like been, I don't want to say what is the right word. There's like lots of betting shops in like poorer parts of the city. I can't wait for all of those to be turned into Polymarket offices. That would be so funny to just expand, like it's like actual whatever brick and mortar Polymarket stores, so the degens can bet. So that would be quite the onboarding campaign to crypto. But anyways, what about you, Denning? Do you consume Polymarket for news?
I get to know things by their ads. Like for a while, my Instagram reels were all about like will Mandani win the New York mayor election. And I was like, oh, there's this new guy about New York is having an election. Cool. I haven't really been participating, but I feel like I do think I don't know if you guys pay attention to the recent crazy news in U.S. It's all crazy, like the Minneapolis fraud, where there's a group of Somalian people who kind of like basically fake funded for over maybe 10 billion or something, and or a few billion, I don't know. And it was basically discovered by a YouTuber, Nick Shirley. And I mean, I'm not speaking highly of this person, but like you can see some interview about him. But I consume information from YouTube channel all the time who are like independent news journalists, and I can totally see that kind of become where like how Polymarkets and other prediction markets position me. Like there is this crazy news happening and no one else has not known yet, but like now getting attention on prediction markets. So I think it could be the future for news, because now nobody believes in like mainstream media, and whenever you read a headline title, you have to be aware of like how left leaning this media is or how right it is. So people don't trust, and so like this is the more truthful way of consuming info. So
yeah, seems like it. Seems like the vision of, what is it, Augur in 2017. I think there was like some ICO projects which were like, they were very egalitarian about this, where it's like, oh yeah, this is like a truth finding mechanism for the world and blah blah blah. Gnosis also, like the creators of CalSwap and Gnosis Chain, and I mean they didn't found Gnosis Chain, but Gnosis Safe. They were also trying to do this. So I think that vision is finally coming to fruition. 7 years later, all of those people were very early. But yeah, very cool to see. And I think with that, let's call it a day here. Thank you for this section on prediction market standing. And you have listened to the Index podcast, and we will see all of you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Crypto data wizards, come join us for the parade. From Bitcoin ETF to Solana meme coin trade, uncovering public secrets in the blockchain shade. Bad chiller, cherry picking liar, we call them out and set chart crown on fire.